Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean those bare necessities, oh, Mother Nature's recipes that are the bare necessities of life. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean those bare necessities. That's why a bear can rest at ease with just the bare necessities of life. Whenever I wander, whenever I roam, I couldn't be fonder of my big home. The bees are buzzing in the trees and making honey just for me. Those bare necessities of life will come to you. Whenever I wander, whenever I roam, well, I couldn't be fonder of my big home. The bees are buzzing in the trees and making honey just for me. Those bare necessities of life will come to you. The bees are buzzing in the trees and making honey just for me. Don't you worry, those bare necessities of life will come to you.
That was from my album, Interior Design. Looks kind of like this, Julie Lavender. You can get it on julielavender.com. That is from My Loins right there. And you know what? Yesterday, I got a copyright strike for playing his music on Facebook. What? And I don't even know how to deal with those people, so I didn't try to tell him. But I mean, I'm playing my own kid's music to promote his music. And I got, hey, Preacher's Kid, I got partially muted yesterday on Facebook for playing my own kid's music. What's with that? I don't know. What a weird world we live in. And so, who knows? I guess, you guys, I'll just have to only play my music all the time. Do you mind if I do that? Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's right, Grammy Pam. I should be going live. I should be on D Live right now, Twitch, Facebook, the Twits. It should be going out there. YouTube, whatever we're doing, it's what we're doing, and on CloutHub. You guys know I have my own CloutHub channel. I think it's 130. I think it's it's not that many. It's in the 100s and somethings. Julie Lavender, and I'm going to figure out how to leverage the use of CloutHub. And I guess they're supposed to be getting the live streaming, so we could actually do that. This is streaming through a whole kind of technological world right now, Restream, and then a special key that allows this to go out to CloutHub daily. So we'll figure it all out. Hey, thank you, Puppy571. I still have dreams about jazz worship and jazz worship events here. You know, I had this kind of thing where you go, have you ever noticed that if you kind of know the beginning, middle, and an end of something, you can somehow press through it to a sense of toleration for whatever difficulty there is. As I've talked to you about this summer, you know, when you are in labor, those horrendous, really, really painful, life-altering contractions are about 60 seconds in length. I mean, they're the worst, you know, it's intense 60 seconds, but you understand the pace. Contraction and then rest, contraction, rest. And of course, when you're going through transition and ready to push the baby out, they're so close together, you don't have much of a rest, but you do have a little break. And having prepared yourself, oh, thank you, 129, Grammy Pam. These are the kind of things I try to save my brain for other things that might be more important than the number of my own channel. But for those of you on CloutHub, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to leverage this better. As an aside, I kind of watch what other influencers are investing in. And Praying Medic really is investing in making CloutHub his central hub. And so having done a lot of research, I think that he's probably got something well thought out and scoped out, and had been thinking about it for several years. And also Dilly and others still on 129. Yay. Has anybody actually got that on to see if it's working? I assume so. They also do a nifty little advertisement for me in the stream to let people know that I'm going live at 1:15 daily. And of course, when I take a little time off, that doesn't seem to apply, right? But my point back to resilience and pain and struggle has to do with what our expectations are, and knowing there's a beginning and a middle and an end. And what happens in birth, generally speaking, is a woman is prepared for that process. We did a lot of discussions about birth and trauma and healing. I did a whole painting this summer on that theme, and on bringing this baby to term, this awakening to term, this second term of our president, and birthing that together. And now we actually, you know, it's hard to, if you're using metaphors, right? Metaphors are very interesting because they're not generally strict to every single happening. But I was thinking, like, did we give birth? You know, did we finish up? Because I was so busy, like, just get me through November 3rd. Just get me through November 3rd. You know, with a building tension in the air, right? Well, we get to November 3rd, and now I'm like, what? Now I wonder if we actually did give birth, and the baby is in the NICU, kind of a thing, right? That's another thing. I've had a similar experience with a couple of my babies that had a lot of bilirubin and jaundice. So they were taken from me and put under the lights, and I had to stay in the hospital and feed them. So it wasn't a super dangerous thing. A little bit of you know, concern, because that bilirubin thing really needs to change and come down, and so they put the babies under the lights and all that stuff. But I'm thinking maybe, hey Larry and Snowbird, I'm thinking, you know, maybe the analogy is that we did give birth, and the baby's is separated from us, like the baby's in the NICU in a sense. Is everything okay, you know? And wondering, and they're monitoring, and we're waiting to see, when can we take this baby home? When can we start the rejoicing? When can we start the child rearing? When we can start this new season? And that's kind of where we are. And you know, one of the hardest things about any pain or struggle in life is just not knowing beginning, middle, end, right? Beginning, middle, end. And at least with contractions in childbirth, you get a sense of what's happening and a way to shepherd your body and a way to encourage your body. And even the husbands, and the birth coaches can do that because they can say, hey, now remember, this is where you are. You're in the beginning stages of labor. Here's what will be helpful to you. Now it's getting more intense. Now you're going through transition. Maybe you want to sit in this position. Maybe you want to be in water. Maybe you want to stand. Maybe you want to sit. And here are some things that are effective, right? And there's this coaching process through that. And I think we coached ourselves through November 3rd, gave birth, and then the baby was sort of whisked away into this situation where things seem to be in danger. And that's kind of maybe where it's been. And there have been some real hopeful days, and then that seems to get kind of pulled back and disappointments. And it's almost like, yes, there you go. It's almost like living on every word of the doctor to say, well, we're concerned there might be some developmental disablement here. And we just won't know. And then, the ups and downs. And I think that's what it kind of feels like. And the process of that is way more draining and difficult. But it's where we are, right? We're not walking away from the baby. Some people have sort of walked away from the baby of this second term of our president and said, oh, I was just kidding. Let's let it go. Let's just make peace with the fact that we won't have a baby to take home. And it's okay. Can't we all just get along? We'll just let it go. Just grieve the loss and move on. And there are some of us saying, no, that is not going to happen. I gave birth to a living, breathing, now being, and something that needs to be in the earth. I'm not walking away and leaving it there. I'm not walking away from all the prophetic promise in that life and all of that. And sometimes it's been shocking who has walked away, right? Who's just sort of caved in and said, well, it's like sometimes if you've ever had miscarriages, and I had a number of them, people can say things like, well, you can have another one, or they seem to think that a miscarried baby somehow brings about less grief than when you've actually held in your arms. And the baby was kidnapped. Yeah, that's even more horrendous. People don't understand that those of you, and along with me, who have been in the birthing process of this awakening of what God is doing in this reclaiming of the country and this new life, this second term, this let's finish what we started. It's not just an idea to us, it's a living, breathing thing, and we're not going to walk away from it. And we're not going to say silly things like, can't we all just get along and transition to the next one? Maybe you can come back. Maybe you can have another one. Or maybe you could adopt. There's another kid over there. I hear he's kind of a criminal, but, he needs a home. So why don't you bring him in? These are the things that we're going through. And I want to encourage us as invested parents of a season, of a movement, that we're right where we need to be, staying and shepherding and watching and praying and preparing and being unwilling to give this life that we've given birth to up. We're not giving it up. And to discover the greater resilience that is really part of fear-free living. Fear-free living as a way of life, as a way of thinking and being, means by its very definition that you are increasing in resilience every single day. Because fear by its very nature will pull the rug out from under you and give you this feeling like you want to go back. You want to recede back to what you knew. At least the prisoners in Egypt, at least the slave masters were something you knew, that you could count on, that you had coped with, that you created a system around. And God has allowed our country, though, to get to the point where it's so uncomfortable and so obvious, then the evil is just becoming so rampant that hopefully Americans have, after a long list of usurpations, like it says in the Declaration of Independence, are not willing to go back to Egypt. And yet it's so very tempting. Can you imagine how tempting it was to go back under British rule and let the teats of the British government just take care of things? And, I've got my land, I've got my thing, I'm doing my deal. Let's just not make waves with Great Britain, the biggest power in the world. But I think Americans are coming to the point where we're not willing to give the baby up. We're not willing to give the life up. It's terribly uncomfortable. We have to fight. And this is a powerful, very good thing. And this is the thing that will drive us past the fear response that wants to send us back to Egypt, wants to send us back into our little worlds where we don't have to assault anything or assert anything. And this is what is building our resilience. You see, you learn to live fear-free when you have consistently stayed in that forward motion of not letting what scares you keep you from doing it anyway. And that's the simplest possible definition of how the brain training works, how faith works, how skills are built. It's simply the thing that says, I refuse to allow the emotional gut response that I could die, that my body is giving me the threat response, to be bigger than the reality that I am really educating myself about, that I am really coming to terms with, that it's way more costly for me to live in fear than it is for me to deal with the gut and deal with the emotions. And over time, every single step we take forward past the old paradigm, past what has been comfortable for us, or past the old, slavery mentality, is so incredibly powerful because it buys us that much more freedom. And it's simply a continued labor of resilience over and over again. And to say, even when you have your face ground into the dust, or you have an ugly confrontation that brings up old things that are just deep, resonating feelings in us, we just continue in and discover the innate reward of being resilient toward the goal of saying, I may have been a slave, I may have acted like a slave, I may have been abused as a slave, but I am now leaving that system. So I'm therefore going to learn to leave slave thinking, leave slave obedience, leave slave allegiance, leave slave disappointment. I'm learning to leave all of that and reintegrate into a world where anything is possible for me, where I can do the things that I was told, in one way or another, over and over and over and over and over and over again, you'll never make it, you can't do it, this is who you are, right? And so this is an interesting season because we're not sure about beginning, middle, and end. We have some clues. We have some keys. Our inside military intelligence source has given us some things that actually have borne out to be quite surprisingly accurate in several ways, and yet still quite mysterious in others. And they've given us, I think God knows, you just enough. There was a season in my life where the emotional pain and distress and fear was significant enough that I needed these way stations a lot more often. I needed that reassurance of a few people that I could call when I was freaking out, and I needed those coping things just to help me go farther than I'd ever gone before and challenge things I'd never challenged. And God has a way of bringing us what we need, but the thing that really changes and begins to shift you into fear-free living is an increased resilience. And that, my friend, is built when we simply just get up and do it again. Another day, another good, healthy thing that we do, another tough conversation, another scary public post, or another thing, and we look it right in the eye and we do it and we feel the thing, and then we release it and stretch into it and find out that we're not going to die. Find out that we can get past it. Find out that there's a greater reality. And right now we're in a real battle of developing and stretching into this resilience. And so what's happening nationally is a fantastic personal upgrade. Because this thing can take you into such darkness, the end of the republic and the camps and they're taking us away, and I won't ever get to fly again, and my banking's going to be, it's the awful, it's the catastrophic. This thing right now has been catastrophized, And the interesting thing about it, unlike some fears, is that, well, maybe like all fear, there's some truth to this. There's some serious threat. There's some serious, wow, this is the real deal, right? And we are determining as a country and as individuals that the alternative of passivity is way worse. The alternative of staying slaves, the alternatives of not fighting for our country and for just and free elections and for our voice to be heard, and not fighting for our right to be wrong, our right to speak and be right or wrong, and not fighting for that is actually going to be way more costly, right, than just continuing on. And so here we are, and I want to encourage you. I think God knows how to give us just enough of what we need in a season to stretch along with it. And isn't that interesting? Because that's how a body stretches in the process of delivery, is just this ouch, pressurized, something's coming. I don't know how long the labor is going to be. I can guess. A great midwife can say, oh, you're ready, you're big, it's big enough to push the baby, but you could push and push and push. I pushed 4 hours with my first child, and he didn't move a whole lot, and so unfortunately they gave me a cesarean. I'm not sure that was necessary at all, but that was what they felt they wanted to do, and I felt pressured along those lines. Thank goodness I got Sean Mark, and but that was that pressure that just stretched my capacity to give birth to more. And here we are, aren't we? Being stretched in the capacity to bring forth more things. And we're being stretched as we go to the NICU and see our brand new baby. It's sort of separated from us, and in this period of time of who's going to be inaugurated and how's it going to work. And yet God has a way of giving you those little pieces of information that help you move into it. And the first one should always be like yesterday, guys. And by the way, I have to say, I got close to 1,000 views yesterday without anybody famous tweetifying me. Thank you. That was very kind of you. Thank you for investing. That shows that it's not about the shiny thing of the click on somebody's page. It's about the relationships we're building. And I was very encouraged by that. And yesterday I gave you next to no chatting. I brought you into the presence of God and said, let's commune with him. So the first thing that gives us the resilience is the quiet of saying, no, the people out there aren't going to do it for me. I'm going to do it in him because he's in me. And that, my friends, is what a mother goes through in the birth process. She realizes that with all the people around her cheering her on, she's the one who's going to be stretched. She's the one who's going to have to cope. She's the one who's going to have to tolerate and breathe and let the process happen. She's the one who's going to have to be mentally engaged, and she's the one who's going to have to push the baby out. And that's where we are, no matter what's happening around us and all the birth coaches we have. We're the ones that are going to have to carry the presence of Christ so completely that we get that inner resilience from communion with him and hearing his voice. And I'll tell you, yesterday, thank you. Yesterday was so beautiful for me in many ways because I spent a lot of time just quiet. I don't feel particularly spiritual. I was just quiet and soaking and loving and thanking and reading a book and taking a nap and resting and going into the place where Christ lives in me to give me that inner resilience. So that's the number one. We did that yesterday. And then that same thing is true when you're in crisis. Have you noticed that? We each have to receive and stop in the midst of crisis. In the screaming memes of the baby could die, oh my gosh, maybe your baby's developmentally disabled, maybe your baby's going to be taken away from you, or maybe he's not going to survive, or these kind of things, which is like where we are with this second term. It's like we gave birth to a beautiful big old fat baby in a landslide. Something nefarious went on, and now we're separated from the thing that we should be able to embrace and work with and delight in and celebrate, right? And still, that resilience has got to come in us of waiting and praying and trusting has to come from that inner walk with God. Then there are these benchmarks that were usually given in times of crisis, like in the birth process. these things will happen. Here are the signs and so forth. And we've been given some benchmarks. And I want to give you a few too. I think now it's begun. A few prophetic voices have come out and said something a little bit shocking, which is that we may have two presidents at the same time for a period of time. We may have two inaugurations. We may have, an experience in the NICU, waiting and watching this baby come, that's going to involve some very unexpected twists and turns. And so keep that in mind. Keep in mind that, and I really appreciated, by the way, X22 report really said, don't think that the president's going to come out and make some big statement. You're not paying attention if that's what you think. Took us through our military intelligence insiders posts, and I went, oh my gosh, this has been here all along. Oh, I can start to see. Was it a guarantee? Was it a perfect roadmap? No, but it made sense. It was like my resilience increased because I had enough information to know that the process might be different than my expectations, right? And unmet expectations not only create grief, but they create fear. And so let's adjust our expectations. Let's reach in for some greater resilience. Let's be prepared if this goes past January 20th. Let's be prepared if we don't get some big life-shattering announcement from POTUS. Let's be prepared because there are reasons why that is happening, and it's not necessarily a bad thing at all. So our paradigm of what it's going to take to be free, what it's going to take to birth this, bring this thing home and increase it and deal with the real issues needs to stretch. And we need to not be surprised and not be, flappable. And that, again, creates in us inner resilience. If you can survive another day in this great deal of uncertainty with so many people screaming, with so much different disinformation, it'd be like being there in the NICU with your kid and having people come in with 3 different lab reports, all for you, about your child. And going, well, wait a minute, that one doesn't, What do you always have to do in those kind of settings that really makes a difference? You have to go into the quiet and hear God and go, there's really no substitute. When Mark Taylor and Chris Mack got on together Sunday night, they basically said, I don't know if we're going to have a show anymore. We'll figure something out, but it's not so easy for us to just jump up and switch to another platform. But they said something interesting. They said, we've done all we can. We've been talking to you for the last 3-4 years about this. We've been telling you for 3 or 4 years what God said. We've been telling you 3 or 4 years how we feel like that should have caused us to prepare. We have told you forever the kinds of resources you're going to need, the kinds of thinking, what to watch out for. If you aren't paying attention and you haven't paid attention, don't look for us in the foxhole. You need to take responsibility because we gave you the best we had. And you know what? That was kind of beautiful to me. And that's one of the things that forced me and encouraged me to go in the quiet and develop a quiet resilience. Because I realized, and I said it yesterday, I don't believe anymore, honestly, that any particular intel or happy news is what's going to change for me inside. That has to be the gold standard for the interior life is the peace of Christ in me as I seek Him and I commune there, right? Because even if you get good news over, hey, Wonder Warrior, I so appreciate what you're doing on your scopes. Even if you get your good news, you can be just a junkie for the next adrenaline rush of relief, right? So this whole thing is building resilience. I was just sharing, Wonder Warrior, what you mentioned about maybe 2 presidents for a period of time. It was interesting that a couple of people, that Hank Kunneman and Kat Kerr, also said, well, they said he's going to be in office no matter what. Even if the other guy is supposedly inaugurated, it's not going to change what God's doing. Isn't that interesting? When I first heard that, my first thought was, oh no. But then you know what? It created in me resilience. It created in me a greater vacuum, a greater strength for, what might I have the capacity to deal with? You see, God has deep faith in his work in your life. So as you leave the fear paradigm that sees everything as a threat, that immediately puts you back in a box of what you were and tells you can't make it and tells you you're going to die and tells you the pain is going to be too much and you can't survive the bullying or the persecution. You'll never do that. You won't be okay. That's the fear box. It draws around you, so you want to withdraw and you want to keep away from the field, and you instead of reaching in and stretching, you pull back into your old coping. It's okay, I'll go back to Egypt stuff. Every single one of these things is actually building a capacity for more, to say what is possible. See, God believes that what he's planted in you is so big and so huge, and that Christ in us, that Jesus is ready to raise the dead any day of the week in any of us. He's got all the experience we need. So whatever situation presents itself before us, the living Christ living in us is totally ready for it. So once I'm realizing that I don't have, my mind just needs to catch up to that reality, and it doesn't need a lot of time. It's a switch. It's a quick switch, right? And you'll have to go back to the beginning and hear it. But the idea is that in one of the things that was listening to this week, saying, you think it's so hard to get from flesh to spirit, but it's not really, because how many times have you been screaming at your kids and then you pick up the phone and somebody calls and you go, oh, hi, nice to hear from you. Or you've been totally witchy bitchy and somebody comes along and you need to pull it into pleasantness and you go, oh yes, come on in. You just switch from this ugly flesh to this somehow restrained, polite self. And I was listening last week to somebody who was encouraging me, saying, you can do that in the spirit. You can move out of the flesh and your fear and your anxiety and your limitation into Christ in me is not shocked. He is ready to raise the dead right this minute, no matter how I feel about it. I might just be witchy bitching all around, and then all of a sudden somebody in front of me needs healing or deliverance. It's him and me, right? And so these are some of the things that when we get a hold of, we develop this capacity, and our brains get more and more resilient to the truth that I can't be stopped. I won't be stopped. Christ in me is not shocked. Christ in me is not upset. Christ in me is not worried. Christ in me is not fallen back. Christ in me is moving forward and stretching and helping me move into the capacity for what's coming. And this is what is being built in us. This is what's being built in us. The ability to move quickly out of a fear state into a state of resilience and faith, to turn out, to reckon the flesh dead, to move into the life of Christ and saying, no, I reach into that. I may feel all these things, but my mind is being renewed to the truth. My resilience is growing. And my friends, this season that we are in right now is one of the greatest resilience builders in the history of man. And we're part of it. And as a tribe of people that is learning to shift the paradigm from terror and fear and unknown and anxiousness into confidence and curation. We are curating the truth right now. We're curating our experiences. We're framing our experiences. We're saying, no, I may feel all these things, but I'm going to curate a display, a perspective of what's happening that's based on who God is and what he's doing. And that's in creating so much resilience. And so this long, extended period of I don't know what and how it is and blah, blah, blah. Now again, we have benchmarks, we have hints, we have prophetic drops, we have intel drops, we have encouragements for one another, we have the Holy Spirit speaking. Thank goodness we do. And each one of those stretches us in to greater faith, greater ability. And from a perspective of counseling and mentoring, from a perspective of life building and coaching and training, this is awesome. This is the marathon level development and not merely the sprint, right? And this is changing the brain, rewiring the brain. And as your brain is rewired and renewed, you're actually learning how little you have to respond in panic and anxiety. Because, I stretched that much farther yesterday. I'm doing it again today. Yep. And we are doing that. We're stretching so beautifully right now. We're increasing in our capacity. I had such a small paradigm going into November 3rd. I just wanted it to be over. I just wanted the baby born. Such a small, actually, and I thought I was moving in huge faith back then. I thought my faith was so huge just to believe for Trump to be reelected, because that psyop was so crazy against him. And now, I got to say, can you not feel that your resilience has deeply expanded? I mean, your capacity, your tolerance for discomfort and the unknown is just, and have you gone into a little ball and died? Is your life over? Or, I mean, and I did the big scary on Friday, looking in the big scary. You got to look right in the eyes and say, okay, let's look those FEMA camps right in the eyes. Let's look all that right in the eyes. Let's take that right into the Garden of Gethsemane and deal with that and go, you know what? I'm not afraid to look at you. Whatever's happening, I take power over all the power of the enemy. Nothing shall by any means harm me. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to be the overcomer no matter what happens. So you go into these places and you strengthen and stretch and develop this incredible resilience. I think we're stronger, more faith-filled, more resilient than we were on November 3rd. I totally believe it. We overcame that massive crash of surprise and chaotic disappointment. We overcame it. Then we learned this incredible capacity. We stretched in our capacity to understand what's been happening worldwide. We stretched in our capacity to understand how deeply people could disappoint us. We stretched in our capacity to understand the players in the battle, right? And we're okay. We're surviving. So give it another day. Stretch into it another day. Reach into it another day. Let your resilience build for another day. And remember, number one, you got to look the big scary right in the eye. Your worst fear, you got to look it right in the eye. You got to say, bring it. What are you telling me? What are you telling me? You going to kill me? Take my kids away? I'm going to lose everything? I won't be able to fly on American Airlines? Give it to me. What are you saying? What are you saying? Let's hear it. Bring it out. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. Go ahead. Hit me with it. And you hear with Holy Spirit. You hear with Christ in you. And you go, really? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Yeah, they told us we'd be all over when Jesus was crucified too. Yeah, they told us that was the end. And then they told us that was the end, when Peter was in prison. Paul and Silas were in prison. Yeah, I said that was it. That, I mean, you can go over and over and over and over. They told, John, that was the end when he was on Patmos. He was exiled, man. His life was over. Right? So there is that. Look it in the eye. There is that need to not go anywhere else for your peace. Be happy if you get some interesting news, but your peace comes from communing with him. And we did the communing episode yesterday. Then there is that receiving the way station clues as just only for you to be able to stretch your faith out and increase. And the last thing I want to say to you is that you really need people. And if at all possible right now, you need to be physically with people. You need to open up your table. Remember last year at this time, I was teaching heavily on the table and table fellowship and having people in your home and sitting across from one another and connecting. And I'm finding, in the last, just personal story, first of all, being in DC with this tribe, wow, best thing ever, really best thing ever. And hey, Barnabas, you made it in. And I'm not talking Zoom, I'm talking about really getting FaceTime with people. And I'll tell you, over the last, started Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Came home Thursday, drove all day from DC. Came home Thursday, pretty tired. Friday, kind of hung out. Oh, you know what? We had a family dinner that night. Our kids gathered. And let me tell you, as a parent, I broached the subject of what the real beef was with some of the things that I had done growing up, where their pain was, what they were struggling with, what were they felt was getting in the way of our family being knit together. And I sat and listened to my children reflect to me where their pain was, where they wish I would have not done certain things. And I got to tell you, it was so beautiful to be in a stage of fear-free living where I didn't have to interpret all of that through shame and guilt, disappointment, failure, perfectionism. I interpreted it through Christ in me. I went, cool. I'll own that. I'll humble myself. Now what do you need? What do you need? Where do you want to go? Let's gather. And I realized as we were sitting there in the midst of this constitutional crisis and the big psyop of propaganda, my family was gathered together with passion, investing in a way to get closer. There were tears. There was pain. There was struggle. I told them where I felt like they let me down. And I watched as in the midst of a world going crazy, we were knitting. We were in it, and how much passion it took. It was a cry for connection. And by creating a space where others could say, I have pain, you wounded me, I didn't like that, I wish you wouldn't have, blah, 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 it actually teed up the ball for more connection. Imagine that. And I thought to myself, this is really interesting. The world is going crazy, and we're connecting in a deeper level. It was the exact right thing to do. You have people right now you need to be doing that with. And then I went and I spent all day quiet out in my pajamas on Saturday, and then I had an excuse. I had an invitation to go to a graduation party. I didn't want to leave the house, and I just made myself go. And that 45 minutes or so with people sitting across the table where I needed to get out of myself and talk to them was so powerful. Oh, and then Saturday, that was actually Saturday, we had the Trump car rally. I would have rather hid in my basement, exhausted, all of the whirling events, and yet we went out to the car rally. So powerful, so powerful. Then, and each day God gave me one powerful personal connection with other people that involved me investing in moving out of my thing and my confusion and my exhaustion. And then last night I didn't want to leave the house, and we had an opportunity to go to a friend's house and have dinner with them and their kids. And my first feeling was, drain out of the energy. I'm just gonna want to get in and out. Do you know I stayed till after midnight? We all watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang together. And started singing, grow the roses from the ashes of success. Grow the road, grow the road, grow the road. You want something to encourage your family? Get the sing-along version of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and sit there and sing it. So my last little tip for y'all, I gave you a series, you can go back, is please, please, please. And then today I met with my pod of project moms we've got local project connections we're working on to build the fibers of really beautiful community locally. These times with people, loving, connecting, sharing, remembering that whatever happens out there, it is the people at your table. It is the people within 5 miles of your house. It is the people with whom you have a cup of coffee and share that are going to, right now in the next season, they're going to be the most powerful connections you have. Whatever happens between us, the most powerful connections we have right now are going to be very personal, very old school. That you pick up the phone, come over to my house, sit with me, talk to me. The people that you identify in your community, that you can share your life with. Table fellowship, laughter, fellowship, home. We even got some little things put together for starting a home a home church fellowship thing going on, in addition to other connections. These things, my friends, help us build resilience and help us move out of fear-free wiring into increased reset as confident lovers of others and people who are fit and capable of reaching through this entire process to the other end, nationally and personally, to see celebrated what God wants to have celebrated in this nation. All right, well, I went a little bit long. I hope you didn't mind. I hope you guys will share. And I have to say that I'm trying to be really careful how much time I spend on devices and media because I'm finding the deepest peace in the quiet. And when I went in the quiet, it wasn't doom and gloomy. It really wasn't. And you need that too. So I love you guys, and I'm sharing some of your things as best I can. But you need to do that too. You're going to have to pull back and spend your time carefully. And I hope what I've shared today with you will help you in some tips. Go do something that scares you. Yeah, like dare to imagine even a longer process of transition to the next administration we know God is going to superintend over. All right, you guys.